Hey, what's up guys? Jackson here with Toasty DIY, and today we're going to be showing you guys how to do the basic tune-up, meaning oil change, spark plugs, fuel filter, and air filter on the John Deere Z235. And now this actually will be pretty similar for quite a few of these zero-turn John Deeres and really even some of the riding mowers. This kit right here specifically fits the Z235 and the Z255, and you can see here they say which serial number it starts from. I'm actually pretty early on. I think this is like a 2011 or 2012. So yeah, this lawnmower has around 130 hours on it. So for its age, really not too bad. The guy used it on a really small yard. So I'm now using it to mow about 4 acres, and it does a pretty good job. It's definitely a little bit of a bumpy ride if you have a lot of hills and stuff, but definitely not bad. So we're gonna go ahead and just dive right into it. We're gonna start off with what I consider to be the harder part and go ahead and start getting the oil draining, and then while that's happening, we can go ahead and start working on the other tune-up items. So the good news is for the oil, they probably make this about the easiest oil change you can do on like any vehicle. Basically, you're gonna take this right here, and it's basically your drain plug. There's no tools or anything required, which is pretty awesome. And then you're just gonna kind of route it right through here, and hopefully you can get a drain pan close enough, which you guys should be able to see. I kind of have it routed through the back because I'm able to get my oil pan there, barely, but it is there, and that's all we need. We just need it to be close enough. I'm probably gonna have to hold it still just so that it doesn't go everywhere. You can also take your oil fill cap, which is this guy right here, and if you take that off, that'll allow for a little bit more air to get in. So we're gonna go ahead and loosen this now, and there we go. So we're getting like a nice steady stream. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this so that it goes out a little bit quicker. But as you can see, our oil is draining out nice and steady. I'm trying not to get it everywhere. They definitely give you a lot of clearance with all this stuff here, especially if you have a bigger oil pan. You could obviously use something a lot smaller and this would be a lot easier. Let's go ahead and just take the nice, long, slow process of letting this drain. All right, so the next step, guys, is going to be removing and replacing our old oil filter with a new one, and this is just a standard screw-on oil filter. If you're anything like me and you forgot where you put your oil filter wrenches, you can just use a pair of channel locks or something along those lines. You know, we're not going to need the old one. Just try not to mangle it too much because you'll end up getting oil everywhere. So hopefully, as long as the previous owner definitely used something to aid in tightening this. In case you guys don't know, whenever you're doing oil filters, especially if you're using an oil filter wrench, you know, you don't want to crank these down. You want them like nice and hand tight, because if you go any tighter than that, you're doing too much. We want to get this old one off. We want to remember when we put the new one on a couple things. One is you want to clean the surface in which your new one goes on so that you don't have a bunch of debris causing, you know, your gasket nut to seal up. And the other thing is we want to add a little bit of fresh oil on to the new gasket, just a couple of drops, and then kind of use your finger to spin it around, and that'll help make sure that the gasket gets a good seal and also make sure it doesn't like dry rot or anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and just preemptively stick a paper towel underneath this oil filter. It's probably gonna have at least a little bit of oil come out of it, but we're gonna do our best to kind of keep it upright, you know. We're gonna take it off nice and quick as well. Try to get this oil filter on quick because I just realized it's still kind of leaking from there. So yeah, the maintenance kit's definitely a good deal. Coming in, I think around, it was like 45 or 50 bucks for everything, and that's basically just a, you know, really a once a year type of deal. Just you know, at the beginning of each season, I would say, kind of after you get your lawnmower out for the first time, you know, go ahead and perform this basic maintenance and you'll be good to go. So we're gonna move these paper towels just to make sure that we don't actually pinch one in the oil filter. And then we're definitely gonna need to use some brake part cleaner so I can actually get this thing like properly hand tight. It's kind of covered in oil right now, but we're gonna go ahead and just get it on there pretty good with our hand just to make sure that we're not constantly leaking oil, because the last thing we want is to clean up oil while it's still leaking. So the next step is going to be replacing our cartridge style air filter. Very simple. And that's one thing that John Deere really, you know, aims for with pretty much all their products, just making everything like as seamless and easy as possible for the at-home user. So there's just 2 screws that you're gonna undo all the way, doing this with one hand so I can hold the camera. And then just like that, the air filter is just right there, and you basically just lift up and then out. There's no screws or anything holding it in. As you can see, this one's honestly still pretty good. You can always tell an air filter like how much longer it has by if you can see light through it really well, and also you can just generally tell it's not super dirty. But you know, we're doing a tune-up. like I said, it comes with a full kit, and I'm just gonna basically, as long as they sell these kits, I'll just keep buying them each year, because the way I see it, you know, 45 to 50 bucks for a full kit, and to make sure that your lawnmower you know, has a good longevity and everything's nice. So it kind of just slopes down, you just push in really hard. That one was just really worn, so it came out a lot easier. So the next step is actually a lot easier than a lot of people may think for the spark plugs. You have a V-twin engine, so you got 2 cylinders. So one here, and then the other one is right here. They do have some pretty big heat shields, so you are going to need a 5/8 spark plug socket. It doesn't have to be spark plug socket, but it definitely helps. Spark plug sockets, really the only difference is they have a rubber piece inside to grip the plug, so when you pull the socket out, the plug comes with it. Not super important for this, but fairly decent. 3/8 ratchet. I mean, you could use a 1/2 inch. Just when you tighten it, be very careful using a 1/2 inch or anything like that, because the last thing you want is to strip out the threads. So you don't need an extension or anything because of how it's angled. You'll end up hitting this metal piece right here. We're gonna go ahead and just get a good starting point. Oh, and that was really easy to take out. I'd actually say that one might have been a little bit loose in my opinion. You'll kind of see once I go to tighten it back down. I'll show you guys like some basic techniques for getting about the right torque and everything. But you definitely want to make sure that you don't have them too loose, because then you will leak compression, and you know, you'll lose power. You'll cause the engine to run rich or lean and everything, and you don't really want that. So just loosen it with your ratchet, and after that, use your hand only. Same with tightening. You know, something I've done a long time ago in the past when I first started working on vehicles was cross-threaded a spark plug hole, and it really sucks. So this is also a good time to kind of see if your engine's, you know, healthy. So naturally, yeah, definitely very, very fuel soaked. I only let the thing run for about, I don't know, maybe 13 seconds, where I basically just started it at full load and then put it down to idle and drove in here. So naturally it might run a little bit rich when you do something like that, but overall looks like we have a fairly good burn. These plugs were obviously replaced not super long ago either, and it looks like we're about there. So once you can't turn it anymore by hand, you're gonna go ahead and get your ratchet back in there, set it to on or tighten, and basically you're going to, I like to kind of choke my hand up on the ratchet. You're gonna turn it, and it's gonna be kind of like a little bit hard to turn, but it's not gonna want to stop, if that makes any sense. So basically you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna feel it start to get tight, and you're like, oh, okay. Then you just usually give it 1/4 or 1/8 of a turn typically, and then you're good to go. The reason you're doing that is because you're trying to crush, and this is probably hard to see, but this little gasket right here, it's a metal O-ring basically. You're trying to crush that gasket. It's literally a crush washer or crush gasket. And then once you get your spark plug nice and tight, make sure that this guy right here is on well. Sometimes these can get unscrewed, these tiny little electrode caps. You're just gonna pop that back on. I do recommend, if you really like doing this stuff and taking care in it, use a little bit of dielectric tune-up grease. It's basically some white grease that goes over the spark plug cap. It helps make sure that you can pull the spark plug boot off next time you go to do the change, because naturally these things kind of corrode and get all nasty. But if you're not keeping it outside and stuff, it's really not too big of an issue. And I'm not going to be putting any on just because honestly I'm lazy and don't feel like finding at the moment, but it does make this situation a little bit easier. It definitely makes it to where it's not as tight on there, and the last thing you want is to rip one of these, because then you got to replace it. And more than likely, I would think that these things have it to where you have to replace the whole entire ignition coil. I don't think that they're just separate plugs, but they could be. So once again, go ahead and get it, you know, fairly loose, and then just do it the rest by hand. And then we're gonna go ahead and put our new spark plug in. We'll check this spark plug too to make sure that, you know, it doesn't look majorly different. If one looks way different than the other, then something's not right. You know, something's going on with, like, I think these are carbs. So yeah, so this one looks about the same. Not quite as fuel soaked, interestingly enough. The other one had a lot of fuel on it. This one really didn't have anything on it. So kind of get tight. I'm gonna kind of choke up on it. Give it a little bit more of a turn. There we go. All right. That definitely feels a lot better. Yeah, based on that one, how loose it was, man, I mean, I'd be really shocked, but it almost seems like they didn't change out both before. There always is the possibility that the person didn't know that it, you know, had 2 cylinders. You'd be surprised. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff over the years, but really simple, just a clear, you know, OEM style filter. You can see they used the exact same one before. I'm gonna go and get the camera set up, and we'll show you guys how to do that, nice and simple. All right, so this part's kind of like, well, I'm not gonna say that it's easy or hard, but basically these are just, they just use pressure. There's no really specific tool required. I'm just using needle nose. You could also use your channel locks. You could also, they do sell a tool just for this that looks like almost like a snake for like a toilet, but it has like a little, you know, a handle and then, you know, a long snake-like part and then a part that closes and opens. Those are really nice for tight spaces, but this one, once again in John Deere fashion, they put it very out in the open for you. I usually like to kind of twist them a little bit because they get kind of stuck on the rubber. And then once you twist them a little bit, then you should be able to just kind of pull it a good distance away, because you got to think you're trying to get over this, so naturally it's not gonna be super easy. So we want to make sure we put the fuel filter the same way. Usually we'll have an arrow on them, yeah, an arrow pointing up, showing the fuel is going from the tank up into the engine. So pretty simple there. Once again, just like you twisted before, go ahead and twist this. You just try to pull, they typically almost never want to come off, so I usually kind of give it a few twists. And the last thing you want is to turn a simple tune-up into needing to replace fuel hose or anything. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and stick our fuel filter into our oil pan. Make sure we got the arrow facing the right way. We're good to go there. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and get this in same way we got it off. So, very simple, like I said. You are going to get messy. That's the one downside, you know. It's not super easy to do this without getting a little bit of oil and fuel on your hands. So now we're gonna return the clamps close as we can to where they were before, just to kind of get them over the barbed fitting, because that's how they seal. Let's go ahead and take this one, get it to the same spot, and boom, we're good to go. And this is a pretty low pressure system as well. It probably only has a few PSI. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I read that it takes about 1.75 quarts of oil. So I think we can do this without a funnel, right? It's always a fun gamble. I'm either gonna get oil everywhere, or I'm gonna just make it absolutely perfect. So one thing I'm gonna not forget to do, which I almost just did, was make sure we put this back where it's supposed to go and go ahead and plug the hole, because that would be kind of embarrassing to have oil come out. Valve close, each one of these bottles is 1 quart. So we're gonna go ahead and carefully pour oil in, like I said, 1.75 quarts. Once we get about 1.5 in there, we're gonna check and make sure that we're good to go on the dipstick, and just to make sure that we're not like way over. If we're already at, like, let's say we're at, you know, 1.5, or what I think is 1.5, because it's very hard to get this to an exact science. We also don't know if we get every last drop of oil out, because I could be on an unlevel surface for all I know. I think it's pretty level, but you never know. And it looks like, yeah, right now we're a little bit over full. With a little over 1.5. We could have even accidentally done 1.75, but now we're gonna go ahead and do what I was saying. You know, make sure everything's tidied up too. You know, just make sure that everything still starts up. The last thing I'm gonna do is an oil change and then not start it and make sure everything's good. Let's go ahead and start it up. Well, it started right up pretty good, so that's definitely a good sign. So let's go ahead and go over here now. It's about 5 to 10 seconds. That usually is enough time for the oil filter to get oil in it. Also, let's kind of like the upper valve train and everything get some oil in it too. So go ahead and make sure we're good here. And see, look at that. Now we're below full. So I'm just gonna go ahead, because, you know, naturally you're gonna always have some very slight oil consumption. If your engine's bad, you know, or you have bad rings or whatever, you're gonna have a lot more oil consumption. But, you know, the last thing we want is to do too little oil, and we have some oil consumption going on that we don't know about, and then end up, you know, seizing up the engine because it ran out of oil. So I always like making sure I'm at the full mark. And how you know you're full is that little bubble up top should be, have some oil in it. And it looks like we're about there. It was just barely filling up the bubble. And we're actually, you know, funny enough, we barely have any oil left. Actually, no, you know what, we're right there. It looks like we have about 8 ounces left. So that's about 1.75, which is exactly what it calls for. It's a good sign that we're there. So now we basically have done everything. We'll do a quick recap. So we first took this here and basically loosened the cap. and then let it drain right there. I know there's some drips on the floor. I need to wipe that right there too. You want to get any oil up because naturally, if you see oil, you're gonna think it's leaking. It's also gonna get on your floor. It's bad for the environment. And on top of that, stuff sticks to oil. So you're gonna get a lot of buildup in that area if you leave oil there. After that, you know, you can do whatever order you want. You can just let the oil drain and then go ahead and add your oil, close it up, start it up. Make sure your oil filter is on. It's not gonna have any oil in it unless you pre-fill it, which I don't really recommend doing. Just go ahead and screw it on dry, and then start it, let oil get into it, then check your level again, then top it off, 1.75 quarts. Both spark plugs, one here and one here, because we have a 2-cylinder engine. Those are both replaced now. Our air filter is right under here. You also kind of have like a pre-filter here for your fan. So you can go ahead and, you know, clean that out, blow it out and everything as well. It's really easy to do. It tells you to do it right there. And then we have our fuel filter right here. Nice brand new fuel filter, looks great. There's a brand new oil filter. And then we're just good to go. And we did all that from this simple kit that was around 45 bucks. Absolutely great deal. Get one of these at the start of every season. If you do a crap ton of grass cutting, like maybe if you're using this for commercial, you know, you might want to do oil changes more often. Check up and see what the hourly change rate is. Also, if you have a brand new mower, you're going to have a break-in period. Usually it's like 8 to 10 hours. You're gonna have to change the oil a lot sooner, and then once you get past the break-in, then it's, you know, regular, like once a year oil changes. If you're in dusty environments, sometimes they call for more. So really simple, nice and easy to do. I love how we didn't have to get on the ground for any of it. Like nothing is really under the mower to access, so that's definitely really nice. So we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you guys subscribe to us, like this video, leave a comment section, or leave a comment in this comment section down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.